I've got a sound loaded in here, and I want to take a look at Classic View. Now, you can go deep and edit all the attributes of the instruments, but I want to just go over a couple of important basics. So here, with the side pane open, we have these different tabs, and I'm going to play this little part I have. Now, let's say you want to automate. We go to the automation parameter, and by default, all of the automation parameters are mapped to the host DAW, so I can go into my host DAW. Again, this is slightly different in each instrument, in each DAW rather, but in Logic Pro, they're at the end of the automation list, and you'll see them all named here, and it works like any kind of automation data. I can choose filter, for example, and I can edit the data and create automation data, for example, like this. You can see it moving. And that's great, and I'll just get rid of that. Now, let's say you want to use MIDI automation for some real-time data automation. So what we can do is switch to the MIDI automation mode here, and then we can use Learn, wiggle a knob on our controller, and then wiggle the knob you want to map it to, and it'll get mapped that way. So for example, I'm going to go into Learn mode and move one of my knobs or faders. There it is. Now I'm going to move this one. So now it's controlling that. And I can go into touch mode, or again, it's a little bit different with each DAW, but I can capture automation any way I want. I'll just capture that. And there it is underneath there. And if we look here, we'll see that we have the CC49 automation, and there it is. So it's very simple to assign MIDI controllers in that way, and then I can click there and I can click remove if I want to unassign it. Now in the instrument header, we get to some instrument settings from this icon here that are useful. Several different tabs. On the first one, the instrument tab, if your instrument uses key switches, we can set which one you want it to open with, which default key switch. You can transpose the instrument from here and set a key range and or a velocity range. So if you want to set up a key split, maybe you want two instruments loaded on the same channel, each triggering a different range of the keyboard, you can set up your key range splits here and or velocity range splits. We have voice handling, so if you're running out of polyphony, what happens to the oldest voice? It'll kill it, or kill the oldest one, it'll kill the newest one coming in, or the highest or the lowest, and it'll set a fade out time here for how the voice ends when that maximum polyphony is exceeded. There are some preferences and options for Time Machine Pro. We saw that mode in the Leap instruments, but you can get to it manually when you're in the edit mode here. When you're streaming, how much of the sample set do you want preloaded into the buffer? The default usually works fine, but you can set it over here and have background loading so that you can start playing the instruments even if all the samples aren't loaded yet. We have some controller handling here. When you're using CC64 for sustain pedal, you can have it work for sustain, but also use it as a regular MIDI controller, or use it only for sustain and not as a regular MIDI CC message, or only as a MIDI CC message. You can have it accept MIDI 123 and 120, which are default messages when that's enabled. And you can also have it respond to CC7 and 10 for volume and pan. And you can even set a range here for the volume control. Now, snapshots, we'll look at that in a moment, but you can set the default location for where snapshots are going to be stored, and it shows the location for factory snapshots. Then you have some info on here. Now, snapshots are another way of saving presets. So when you adjust settings, maybe I'm going to go into the edit menu on this instrument. Maybe I want to adjust this over here. For example, maybe I like it like that and I want to save it. When we get this little camera icon, we can then use this floppy disk icon to save a new snapshot. And I'll just save this quickly and I'll append my initials to it. And you'll see now in the menu here, we get the factory snapshots as well as the user one that I just created. And when the user one is created, you can also, let me just switch to a factory one and then switch back to this one just so I can show you the full functionality. You can now hit the trash icon to delete it. And if I delete that one, and with no user snapshots, we just get the factory subfolders there. Now, as we saw, when we're working with multiple output instruments, and we have the output showing here, we get to the routing and configuration here, but we can also call up some processing internally within Kontakt. It comes with a ton of great processing. For example, there's the Beatmaster Beat Slicer that we saw in the Leap instruments, but you can access these all manually here and run this as a kind of regular mixer setup with insert and send effects. Now, we're just scratching the surface here. I just wanted to give you a taste of some of the important things you can do here, but you can dig deep and get into every aspect of an instrument if you want to. We'll continue with more in the next video.